stopped excavation, which is very strange. So what would be a logical reason to not excavate these fascinating ancient sites that are at least 11,000 years old?
A mountain so sacred that no one dares to set foot on its peak. A temple at its base, rumored to guard astonishing secrets. Hidden caves, ancient archives, and restricted sites that even experts aren't allowed to explore. These are the forbidden archaeological sites experts aren't allowed to enter, where history remains locked away, and the world may never know what truly lies inside. The Temple of Mount Kailash. Mount Kailash is a place of mystery, devotion, and untouchable power. Rising over 21,000 feet in the remote landscapes of western Tibet, this mountain is unlike any other. No one has ever climbed it, and no one ever will. But why? What makes this one of the most sacred and forbidden places on Earth? The mountain's name itself holds meaning. Kailash comes from the Sanskrit word for crystal or shining, fitting for a peak that stands out against the sky like something out of legend. In Tibet, it's called Gang Rinpoche, meaning precious snow mountain, a title that hints at the reverence it commands. But these names only scratch the surface of its significance. For thousands of years, Mount Kailash has been a spiritual axis, a place believed to connect heaven and earth. For Hindus, this is no ordinary peak. It's the sacred home of Lord Shiva, where he meditates in eternal stillness with his wife, Parvati. Ancient texts call it the pillar of the world. According to Hindu scriptures, its 4 faces are made of crystal, gold, ruby, and lapis lazuli, an otherworldly composition that makes it clear this place isn't of the ordinary realm. The Skanda Purana even claims that just looking at the Himalayas can cleanse a person of their sins. But what happens when someone dares to set foot here? For Buddhists, the mountain holds another powerful identity. They believe it's actually Mount Meru, the cosmic center of the universe, and the home of Demchok, a wrathful deity of supreme bliss. The 11th century Saint Milarepa is said to have meditated on Kailash, and his connection to the mountain is legendary. But he wasn't the only one drawn to its power. A Bon shaman named Naro Bonchung once challenged Milarepa in a mystical duel, determined to prove his own spiritual strength. What happened next solidified Kailash's status in Buddhism forever. Jains too see Kailash as a place of ultimate significance. They call it Ashtapada, and believe their first Tirthankara, Rishabhadeva, attained liberation here. His son, Bharata Chakravartin, is said to have built temples at Kailash, monuments to a journey beyond the physical world. But Kailash's influence doesn't end there. The ancient Bon religion of Tibet holds that this mountain is the dwelling place of the sky goddess Sipai Men, and it was once the spiritual center of the mysterious Zhangzhong civilization. Every tradition tied to Kailash reinforces the same idea. This is no ordinary place. It is sacred, powerful, and untouched. But Kailash isn't just a spiritual landmark, it's also one of the most important geographical locations in Asia. It's the source of 4 of the continent's greatest rivers: the Indus, Sutlej, Brahmaputra, and Karnali. These waters sustain millions, earning Kailash the title of the Water Tower of Asia. Yet, even the lakes near the mountain tell a story of duality. Lake Manasarovar, known for its pristine, fresh waters, is linked to purity and enlightenment. But just beside it lies Lake Rakshastal, a dark saline lake wrapped in ominous legends. One represents good, the other something more sinister. Nothing about Kailash is simple. For those who visit, the ultimate act of devotion is the Kailash Kora, a sacred pilgrimage around the mountain. It's not an easy journey. The full circuit is about 32 miles, and most take 3 days to complete it. But for the most devout, it's a single-day challenge. Some take it even further, prostrating themselves fully on the ground every few steps, stretching the journey to weeks of relentless effort. Hindus and Buddhists circle Kailash clockwise, while Bon practitioners go counterclockwise. The path reaches its highest point at Drolmala Pass, towering over 18,000 feet. At this altitude, oxygen levels drop, and every step becomes harder. Yet thousands make the journey, enduring the exhaustion, the cold, and the thin air, believing that each step erases lifetimes of bad karma. But there's one thing no one dares to do. Despite all the mountains that have been conquered by climbers, Mount Kailash remains untouched. Not because it's impossible to scale, but because it is forbidden. Many have considered the climb, but something always stops them. In the early 20th century, British explorer Hugh Rutledge studied the mountain and decided it wasn't meant to be climbed. Decades later, legendary mountaineer Reinhold Messner sought permission to attempt the ascent, but even he was turned away. The Chinese government has since officially banned all climbing attempts, not for political reasons, but out of respect for its sacred status. To this day, Mount Kailash stands as the mountain no one will ever conquer, holding secrets no one will ever fully understand. On the other hand, a sealed cave was finally opened, revealing something unimaginable. The hidden caves of Mogao Grottoes. Hidden in the cliffs of western China, the Mogao caves hold secrets that have been waiting for over 1,000 years to be uncovered. Hidden within the cliffs above the Dachuan River near Dunhuang, a vast network of Buddhist caves guards secrets etched in stone. Who carved these sacred chambers, and what unseen forces drew them to this desolate place? The origins of the Mogao caves stretch back to the year 366, when just one man decided to shift the tide of history with a life-changing decision. A Buddhist monk had a vision of 1,000 golden Buddhas shining in the sky. Inspired, he began carving a meditation cave into the rock, unknowingly starting a tradition that would last for the next 1,000 years. What began as a quiet retreat for monks soon became something much bigger. Over time, rulers, merchants, and devotees sponsored the creation of more caves, filling them with breathtaking murals and sculptures. By the 14th century, the Mogao caves had become one of the largest collections of Buddhist art on Earth. But these caves weren't only used as places of worship, they were time capsules, preserving fragments of history that would remain untouched for centuries. Dunhuang, the city closest to the caves, wasn't always the sleepy desert town it is today. In ancient times, it was a major stop on the Silk Road, the vast trade network connecting China to the Middle East, India, and Europe. Established as a military outpost by the Han Dynasty in the year 111 before the Common Era, Dunhuang became a melting pot of cultures where merchants traded silk, spices, and ideas. This constant movement of people brought Buddhism from India to China, and the Mogao caves became a reflection of this religious and artistic exchange. But while traders passed through, Buddhist monks stayed, dedicating their lives to creating art that would outlive them all. Walking through the caves today is like stepping into another world. There are 735 caves in total, containing over 45,000 square meters of murals and more than 2,000 painted sculptures. The artwork spans 1,000 years, capturing the changing styles, beliefs, and influences that shaped Buddhism in China. Some murals show enormous towering Buddhas, while others depict intricate scenes from Buddhist sutras, painted with exquisite detail. There are celestial beings, monks in flowing robes, and depictions of the Silk Road itself, merchants leading camels through the desert, traders exchanging goods, and pilgrims on their way to India in search of sacred texts. Every image tells a story, revealing what life was like in this distant past. But deep within the caves lies something even more astonishing. In the year 1900, a Taoist monk named Wang Yuanlu stumbled upon something that would change history. While clearing away debris from one of the caves, he discovered a hidden chamber, completely sealed off. Inside, he found thousands of manuscripts, paintings, and textiles, untouched for centuries. This was Cave 17, now known as the Library Cave, one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the modern era. The manuscripts, dating from the 5th to the 11th century, covered everything from Buddhist scriptures to government records, folk tales, and medical texts. One book stood out among them all, the Diamond Sutra, the oldest known printed book in the world, dating to the year 868. The discovery of this cave was like opening a window into a lost world. But the fate of these priceless texts was about to take an unexpected turn. News of the library cave spread quickly, attracting explorers and scholars from around the world. Among them was British archaeologist Aurel Stein, who in 1907 persuaded Wang Yuanlu to sell him a large portion of the manuscripts. Other foreign expeditions followed, taking many of the cave's treasures to museums in Europe and Japan. By the time Chinese authorities realized what had happened, a significant portion of the collection was gone. The loss of these manuscripts remains a controversial topic today, raising questions about cultural preservation and the ownership of historical artifacts. But despite the dispersal of its treasures, the Mogao caves remain a testament to the rich cultural exchange that once flourished along the Silk Road. What makes the Mogao caves truly remarkable is the diversity of their art and texts. Unlike many ancient religious sites that focus on a single tradition, Mogao reflects influences from India, Central Asia, Persia, and even the Greco-Roman world. The manuscripts found in the library cave were written in a variety of languages, including Chinese, Sanskrit, Tibetan, and even languages that have since disappeared. This reveals just how interconnected the world was, even 1,000 years ago. Buddhism may have been the dominant religion here, but the caves also contain traces of Taoism, Nestorian Christianity, and even Manichaeism, a faith that once spread from Persia to China. This blending of cultures makes Mogao not only a Buddhist site, but a historical crossroads where ideas from different civilizations came together. Today, the Mogao Caves are a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a major destination for historians, religious scholars, and travelers alike. Visitors can explore some of the caves in person, guided through the dimly lit chambers where murals glow with centuries-old pigments. So, what started as a single monk's vision has become one of the greatest artistic and religious sites in history. But there was another site that completely lost its wisdom to fire, leaving behind a mystery that still haunts history. The Library of Alexandria. This wasn't just a library. Within its walls, discoveries were made that would shape the future of science, math, and literature. But what secrets were lost when its halls fell silent? How many breakthroughs vanished before the world ever knew they existed? This was where ideas sparked revolutions. For all its brilliance, its story is full of mystery, destruction, and loss. Why could experts not get to this place before it was gone forever? How did such a powerful institution disappear? And what was left behind? The library was founded in the 3rd century before the Common Era, during a time when Egypt was ruled by the Ptolemies, Greek kings who took over after Alexander the Great's conquests. Ptolemy I, one of Alexander's most trusted generals, wanted to make Alexandria the intellectual capital of the world. His successor, Ptolemy II, turned that vision into reality, creating the Library of Alexandria as part of a larger institution called the Museon, a place dedicated to the 9 muses, the Greek goddesses of the arts and sciences. From this point on, this place became revolutionary. The Ptolemies were obsessed with gathering every book, scroll, and piece of knowledge they could find. They sent agents all over the known world to collect texts from Egypt, Greece, India, Persia, and beyond. Some accounts even say they seized books from travelers arriving in Alexandria, made copies, and returned the duplicates while keeping the originals. It was unfair, but these people meant business. They knew no limits when it came to their need for knowledge. The goal was simple: to house every piece of knowledge ever written. By some estimates, the library eventually held between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls, covering everything from medicine to astronomy, mathematics to philosophy. The scholars of Alexandria used them to change the world. Some of the greatest thinkers in history worked here. Eratosthenes, the head librarian, figured out the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy using just shadows and simple math. Hipparchus created the first known star catalog and discovered the precession of the equinoxes, changing how people understood astronomy. Herophilus, one of the earliest anatomists, studied the nervous system and was one of the first to differentiate between veins and arteries. Callimachus developed one of the first library cataloging systems, a model that influenced the way books have been organized ever since. The knowledge produced here laid the groundwork for centuries of scientific progress, but this golden age wouldn't last forever. For such a grand institution, the Library of Alexandria didn't come to an end in a single dramatic event. Instead, its destruction happened in stages over centuries, with different rulers and conflicts chipping away at it. The first major blow may have come in the year 48 before the Common Era, when Julius Caesar found himself trapped in Alexandria during a civil war. To gain an advantage, he ordered his men to set fire to the enemy's fleet. But the fire spread beyond the harbor, reaching parts of the city. Some sources suggest that the flames reached the library, destroying a significant number of scrolls. But the library wasn't gone yet. A few centuries later, during the 3rd century of the Common Era, Emperor Aurelian launched a military campaign in Alexandria to take the city back from Queen Zenobia of Palmyra. His forces laid waste to large sections of Alexandria, possibly causing more damage to the library. But it was in the late 4th century that the library may have suffered its most devastating loss. The Roman Empire had officially embraced Christianity, and in the year 391, the Christian bishop Theophilus led efforts to destroy pagan temples in Alexandria. The Serapeum, a temple that may have housed part of the library's collection, was one of the sites destroyed. Even after these events, some believe that parts of the library's collection may have survived. But if they did, they faced another threat in the year 642, when the Muslim forces of Caliph Omar took Alexandria. According to one controversial account, Omar ordered that any remaining books be burned, supposedly saying that if they agreed with the Quran, they were unnecessary, and if they contradicted it, they were dangerous. However, many historians doubt this story, suggesting it was a later invention rather than a real event. Either way, by this time, whatever remained of the Library of Alexandria was lost to history. Centuries later, the idea of reviving the library came back to life. In the early 21st century, the Egyptian government, with support from UNESCO, opened the Bibliotheca Alexandrina near the original site. This modern library is a center of learning, housing millions of books and research facilities. Designed by a Norwegian architectural firm, its circular shape symbolizes a rising sun, a reminder that knowledge, no matter how many times it's lost, can always be rediscovered. But what happens when all of these secrets are trapped under layers of ice? Antarctica. This is one of the most extreme places on Earth. It's the coldest, windiest, driest, and most isolated continent, sitting at the very bottom of the planet, covered in ice that's been there for millions of years. But despite its frozen landscape, it holds some of the most important secrets about Earth's past, present, and future. Scientists have been drawn here for decades, trying to understand everything from climate change to the possibility of life beyond our planet. But Antarctica is also the last truly untouched wilderness, and what happens here could impact the entire world. This massive continent is about 14 million square kilometers in size, making it bigger than Europe. Almost the entire landmass is covered in a thick sheet of ice, which holds about 70% of the planet's fresh water. That alone makes it one of the most crucial places on Earth. If just a fraction of this ice melts, sea levels around the world will rise, affecting millions of people. But that's not all. Antarctica has towering mountain ranges, massive glaciers, and even active volcanoes. The continent is divided into two main parts by the Transantarctic Mountains. East Antarctica is a high plateau covered in ice, while West Antarctica is more rugged and includes the Antarctic Peninsula, which stretches towards South America. That's also the part of Antarctica warming the fastest, and scientists are racing to figure out why. For most of history, Antarctica was just a rumor. Ancient civilizations speculated that a massive landmass had to exist in the south to balance the continents in the north, but no one had ever seen it. That changed in the early 19th century when explorers from Russia, Britain, and the United States finally confirmed its existence. Over the next 100 years, expeditions pushed further into the icy continent. The early 20th century became known as the heroic age of Antarctic exploration, where explorers risked their lives to be the first to reach the South Pole. In 1911, Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen won the race, beating British explorer Robert Falcon Scott, who arrived weeks later, but didn't survive the return journey. These early missions mapped large parts of Antarctica and laid the foundation for future scientific research. But what they found was a place unlike any other on Earth. Antarctica's climate is brutal. The coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth was here, 89.2 degrees Celsius below freezing at Vostok Station in 1983. The interior is so dry that it's classified as a desert, with almost no precipitation. But don't let the stillness fool you. Along the coast, katabatic winds rush down from the high plateau, reaching hurricane speeds and making Antarctica the windiest continent on Earth. During the summer, the coastal areas can warm up slightly, sometimes rising above freezing. But in the winter, when the sun disappears for months, temperatures plunge, and the entire continent becomes a frozen, inhospitable wasteland. Yet somehow, life finds a way to survive. Despite its harsh conditions, Antarctica is home to an incredible variety of life, mostly in the surrounding Southern Ocean. Tiny phytoplankton form the base of the food chain, feeding krill, which in turn support entire ecosystems of fish, seals, whales, and seabirds. Penguins, especially emperor and Adelie penguins, are some of the most famous residents, surviving the brutal winters by huddling together in massive groups. Seals, including Weddell, leopard, and crab-eater seals, thrive in the icy waters, while seabirds like snow petrels and skuas soar above. On land, life is much more limited. The only plants that survive here are mosses, lichens, and a few hardy microorganisms. But even in Antarctica's extreme cold, scientists have found microscopic creatures like tardigrades and nematodes, proving that life can exist in some of the harshest places on Earth. Unlike every other continent, Antarctica has no permanent human population. No one lives here full-time, but thousands of scientists work at research stations year-round. Right now, over 50 countries operate research bases on the continent, studying everything from climate change to deep space. The largest of these is the United States McMurdo Station, which serves as a major hub for Antarctic research. The Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, also run by the US, sits right at the geographic South Pole, where scientists study everything from glaciology to astronomy. The British Rothera Research Station on Adelaide Island focuses on marine and terrestrial biology, while Belgium's Princess Elizabeth Station stands out as the first zero-emission base, running entirely on renewable energy. These stations exist under the Antarctic Treaty, a unique international agreement that prevents any country from claiming Antarctica as its own, and ensures that all activities are for peaceful scientific purposes. One of the most critical reasons scientists study Antarctica is to understand climate change. Ice cores drilled from the ice sheet contain tiny bubbles of ancient air, allowing researchers to analyze the planet's climate history going back over 1 million years. These records reveal how carbon dioxide levels and temperatures have changed over time, providing crucial data on how human activity is impacting the planet today. Scientists are also closely watching Antarctica's glaciers, particularly the Thwaites Glacier, often called the Doomsday Glacier. This massive ice sheet is melting at an alarming rate, and if it collapses, it could lead to a dramatic rise in global sea levels. But Antarctica is also a key location for astrophysics. The IceCube Neutrino Observatory, located at the South Pole, detects high-energy neutrinos from deep space, helping scientists learn more about the universe. Because of Antarctica's thin atmosphere, high elevation, and long periods of darkness, it's one of the best places on Earth for studying space. Meanwhile, researchers exploring subglacial lakes buried beneath miles of ice are searching for microbes that could offer clues about life on icy moons like Europa and Enceladus. Antarctica's extreme environment makes it the closest thing we have to an alien world right here on Earth. Looking ahead, Antarctica faces both challenges and opportunities. Climate change is reshaping the continent, with warming temperatures leading to more melting ice and changing ocean currents. Scientists are racing to understand these shifts before they cause irreversible damage. At the same time, new technologies are allowing researchers to explore parts of Antarctica that were once unreachable, from deep-sea ecosystems to hidden subglacial lakes. International cooperation remains crucial as countries continue to balance scientific research, environmental protection, and growing geopolitical interest in the region. But now, let's talk about the place where the past didn't freeze. Instead, it dried, leaving behind something even more haunting. The Cave of the Mummies. The mummies of Guanajuato might look fascinating, but you could never guess the reality behind their existence. Experts never got to witness the events unfolding, and they never will. But these bodies weren't wrapped in bandages or carefully prepared for the afterlife like Egyptian mummies. They were regular people who died and were buried, only for nature to preserve them in a way no one expected. Today, they are on display in a museum that draws thousands of visitors every year, but their story is far from simple. It's a mix of history, tragedy, science, and controversy, all wrapped up in one of the most unsettling and fascinating attractions in Mexico. It all started in the early 19th century, when a devastating cholera outbreak hit Guanajuato. People were dying quickly, and the city had to bury them just as fast to prevent the disease from spreading. The conditions in the cemetery, dry air, mineral-rich soil, and airtight tombs, ended up creating the perfect environment for natural mummification. But no one knew this at the time. It wasn't until decades later, in the 1870s, that the first mummies were discovered, and the reason was surprisingly bureaucratic. The local government introduced a burial tax, and families had to pay a fee to keep their loved ones in the cemetery. If they couldn't afford it, the bodies were dug up and removed to make space for new burials. That's when workers started noticing something strange. Many of the bodies weren't decomposed like they expected. Instead, they had dried out naturally, their skin and features still eerily intact. Instead of simply reburying them, workers stored the mummified remains in an ossuary, and soon enough people started paying to see them. What started as a practical solution to a space problem quickly turned into one of the most unusual tourist attractions in the world. By 1969, the mummies had gained so much attention that an official museum, the Museo de las Momias, was established to house and display them. Today, the museum has over 100 mummies, each one unique. Some are still dressed in the clothes they were buried in. Others have expressions frozen in time, some peaceful, some appearing to scream. The most unsettling part? One of them is a mummified infant, believed to be the smallest mummy in the world. The sight of these preserved bodies raises endless questions. Who were these people? What were their lives like? And how would they feel knowing their remains are now on display? For some, the museum is a fascinating glimpse into history, a way to understand past burial customs and the impact of the cholera epidemic. For others, it's unsettling, even controversial. Critics argue that displaying human remains like this is disrespectful, turning people's final resting places into a spectacle. The debate isn't only about ethics, it's also about preservation. In recent years, concerns have been raised about how the mummies are being handled. In 2023, Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History warned that a traveling exhibition featuring some of the mummies could be a health risk after one of the bodies showed signs of fungal growth. Then, in 2024, a piece of an arm detached from one of the mummies during renovations at the museum, sparking accusations of mismanagement. Keeping these mummies intact is no easy task, even though they were naturally preserved. Exposure to changing humidity, temperature, and light can speed up their deterioration. The museum has taken steps to control the environment, but there's still a long way to go in ensuring their long-term preservation. Scientists are also studying how the mummification process happened in the first place, hoping to learn more about how these bodies managed to survive for so long. Despite the controversy, the Museo de las Momias remains one of the most popular attractions in Guanajuato. Walking through the museum is a chilling experience. The mummies are displayed in glass cases, some standing upright, others lying down, their faces frozen in expressions that look too lifelike for comfort. Each one tells a different story, and while some displays provide information about who these people were, many remain anonymous, their identities lost to time. Interactive exhibits and guided tours give visitors a deeper understanding of 19th century rituals and the science behind mummification. But no amount of explanation can take away the eerie feeling of standing face to face with the dead. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.